Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, there's something that I know is true about you. You are probably a small business owner and you might be a solopreneur, which means that you are probably listening to this in your pajamas at home by yourself. Okay, let's all be real. Did we put on pants today? I don't know. But the thing is when you're a solopreneur, it is sometimes tricky to figure out how to brainstorm when it's me, myself, and I. Like, who else are you going to talk to? And my special guest today is Carrie Anton, and she's going to simplify how to brainstorm solo, which really helps you get unstuck when you're a business of one. Carrie Anton worked as a full-time author and editor for American Girl publications in the advice and activity line from 2005 to 2013, during which time she wrote several contemporary nonfiction books for 8 to 12-year-old girls, which I'm willing to bet if you've got a few teenagers at home, you've probably seen some of her work. Her work has also been published by Women's Health, Family Circle, Oxygen, and so many more. She's written this book called Me, Myself, and Ideas, the Ultimate Guide to Brainstorming Solo. And that's what we're simplifying today. I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Carrie Anton. Hey, Carrie.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am glad you're here as well. And I just have to say straight out the gate, your book is phenomenal. I love how creative it is. It's laid out in the graphic design of it. It's so much, sparks so much creativity and brainstorming for myself. So I can't wait for our audience to really dive into this book and learn more.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to hear that.
So, okay, right. When you are a solopreneur and you're doing all the things, and that's how most all of us start off when we start a business, unless we've got investors and lots of cash and can hire lots of people right from the get-go. Let's talk about this. So why is the practice of brainstorming new ideas so incredibly viable and vital for solopreneurs, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, ideas are kind of what make the world go round, right? And when it comes to our lives, we use ideas all the time, whether it be us deciding what we're going to wear for the day, what we're going to eat, where we're going to shop. And then when it comes to our business, how are we going to reach our customers? What products are we going to put out there? What services do we want to offer? All of those start as ideas. And so without them, the small business kind of stops running and you sort of hit that struggle bus. So it's time to really kind of hone in and think, what am I going to do today? And that starts with ideas.
Oh, and it's so true. I mean, I was reading a study recently that more and more people are branching out and sparking their own business. They're jumping off the corporate 9 to 5. And so there are so many of us out there in our pajamas working from home, working in little silos. And, you know, this is incredibly important. So how do we brainstorm solo, right? Like how do we do this by ourselves? Don't you need a group, right?
Right. We've been kind of raised to think that the ideas come from groups, whether it be the schools that we've been in or the companies that we've worked for traditionally. Groups are where ideas happen. But if you've ever been in one of those groups, you know that ideas usually actually start with just one person, because nobody is going to, in an entire group, not everybody is going to say the same exact idea at the same exact time and all have the same exact things to add to it, right? So just one person brings up the idea and then the group adds on to it to move it forward. So when you're brainstorming by yourself, that dynamic goes away. But essentially, when it comes to creating an idea, it's still just one person, but that person's you.
Okay, so we're going to dive into this and maybe give a little bit of glimpse inside your book for others. But I, again, highly recommend you guys going out and getting a copy of this book. So you break it down into a 6-step agenda, if you will. Greetings and ground rules, the breakout session, icebreakers, brainstorm, sit and simmer, and then debrief. So you're sitting down to brainstorm by yourself. Where do we begin?
Yeah, so the reason and I say we because I have a co-author on this book, the reason we broke down the book this way is because we really wanted to follow what people are used to. And this is the typical agenda that happens for a group brainstorm. So the introductions happen and you meet one another in the room. In our case, because it's just you should know yourself pretty well, but you may not know yourself as a brainstormer. And so that's where we start. We want to figure out, what is your creativity level? How do you usually interact with ideas? How do you interact with your business and where those ideas play in? So we start at the base, we start with you because you're the one that's coming up with that idea, right? And then in the next step, we move into the sort of location. We call it the breakout because usually this is the point in a group where everybody sort of breaks out into little groups to get to know each other, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I'm used to in the group situation, especially at American Girl, we had these really cool brainstorm rooms where there were like comfy couches and bean bags and things like that, and you got comfortable. Well, you have that available to you in so many different places. You have it in your home. You can do it in your office, yes, but you have all the other rooms of your house that you can brainstorm in, and there's creative ways to do so. But you can also go to coffee shops, libraries. You could do it when you're traveling and you're in a different country. There's so many places to brainstorm. So that's such a cool way to just sort of spark new ideas just by being in a different place, right?
Yeah, and that's what I really loved about in the book. I mean, you have this little floor plan and you mention, well, what about the kitchen? And it made me think, well, I'm just there to get a sandwich. But no, actually, right. I am brainstorming and I could potentially activate new ideas while I'm doing food prep and, playing with spices or making a chili, and all those things. And it's activating a different side of your brain, right? And that counts as a location as well.
It does. And that kind of brings us to the creativity portion, which is the icebreakers. So for a lot of people hate icebreakers. I am kind of one of those people. They can be pretty awkward, right?
Yeah.
The trust falls, the two truths and a lie, that kind of stuff. So our icebreakers are really bent more to get out of work mode, like work brain mode, and into creativity mode. Because what happens in work brain mode is you're usually dialed into a task. And being dialed in is not how ideas happen. You want to open up space and make your brain open to everything that's out there, right? So when you're talking about going to the kitchen and, playing with spices and things like that, you're being creative in a way that doesn't have to be like, I have to draw a picture or make a craft or knit a scarf, right?
Right.
It's just getting your brain going in a different way and creating some of that space.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned also kind of tapping into child's play as an icebreaker.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we have the icebreaker section broken down into different groups, and child's play is one of them. And it's really awesome because the child's play section just like sends you right back to kindergarten. It's all those like fun little crafts that your mom hung on the refrigerator as a sign of like, you're an artist. So really you don't have to have any skills. You can doodle things and we suggest things like writing your name backward or taking some of the junk mail that came in and making a collage out of it. It doesn't have to take long. It doesn't have to be anything prize-worthy. It can go right into the trash afterward. But the idea is to just get your mind out of work mode. And this is just a couple of easy ways to do that.
And one that I like to use personally, and again, if you're listening to this episode thinking, well, that's going to take a lot of time or money, or I got to go to Target and get all the supplies. No. Grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, and literally one of the fun things that I do is draw something that you see, but in one continuous line. So, and it could be like the worst drawing in the universe. It's not about drawing
It will
perfectly.
Be the worst drawing.
Yes. So just draw something. If it's a tree you see out the window, if it's, whatever, the fruit bowl on the countertop, and just draw with one continuous line without pulling the pen up off the paper. So what you're saying with the icebreakers is that these aren't like solving the business challenge that you're trying to figure out. It's just literally changing your brain to a different gear, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like shifting. That's all you're doing. You're shifting from work to having a little bit more fun. It's sort of like, okay, great, I have this list of ideas. Now what do I do with them? And so that's where the sit and simmer happens. Because in the sit and simmer stage, what most people don't realize is that you can't just jump into an idea. You're going to take it maybe too far, and before you've really given it time to sort of develop and sort of, become something on its own, and just give yourself the time to question things, right? So we kind of talk through that. And then the last section is the debrief. And that's that's really, okay, now I have an idea. How do I move forward with it? And also, how do I set up my life so that I don't always have to do a brainstorm session? So that brainstorming and ideas is a little bit more spontaneous at times. So it's about welcoming creativity into your life. And so overall, like the goal was, let's keep the agenda, but now let's kind of flip it a little so that it's geared toward, all the activities in the book are now geared toward you. So the introduction section is a really good example, because with the introduction, well, you should already know yourself, right? Yeah. Like there's nobody else in the room. You don't have to say, hi, my name is, But what we really wanted to tackle was, how do you know yourself as a brainstormer? What is your idea person like? And so we set it up as a quiz, and that's definitely our American Girl side coming through. Is we know that kids don't have a lot of attention span, but guess what? Adults don't really either. And so we use quizzes and, all different types of activities throughout the book to really engage the person. So they're not just reading and writing and, you're really getting out there and they're thinking. But the introduction section, I think, is one of my favorites, just because it's so fun to jump in. It's also fun because, us as solopreneurs, a lot of us like to procrastinate from time to time, and a good personality quiz will do it.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting because, it is a playful way to get at what is at the core of what's either blocking you from being able to come up with creative ideas, or even sit down and do the brainstorm in the first place. I think what happens sometimes with me is I work in an office space, but then I also work from home a couple of days a week. And, those days where you work from home, you're like, oh, yeah, I kind of need to do that laundry over there. Oh, I kind of need to do, you can see all the other things that you need to be doing that goes ahead of the thing that is, painful, you're not really looking forward to or whatever. And yeah, I think that what's nice about this book is that, you can dip in and out of it. You don't need to read the entire book from start to finish to be able to actually glean something from it to get you sparked to go do the thing. And yes, the quiz is super fun in the beginning to figure out what type of brainstormer you are, whether you are, as you call, Charlie in charge, or are you super practical, or are you kind of laid back in your style. I love that. It certainly helps. What I think is also interesting is in stage 1, the ground rules side. You actually recommend, out of the 8 rules, that you take a nap. Tell me more about why that is a good idea.
Because if you gave up a steady paycheck and, full-time benefits to work for yourself, it is one of the perks of the job. In traditional corporate, most of the time, with a few exceptions, I think Zappos is the one company I know of that actually has nap pods that they encourage napping. But I don't know a lot of other traditional businesses that do that. And so if you are going to give up those very, steady things in your life, then you should take advantage of the different types of perks that come with being a solopreneur, because napping is one of them. But aside from the perks, it's also a nice refresh. Yeah. Sometimes I think of, when you're a kid, we took naps, like our parents made us take naps for a reason, right? Because we got cranky if we didn't. And when you get cranky or stuck or whatever that looks like in your adult life, a nap is a nice reset. And sometimes people think, well, I'm taking a nap, like I'm not doing my work. But if you're trying to struggle through that time when you're just exhausted and you're not seeing straight and you can't, you just can't make it work, a nap might actually be more productive for you than actually working through it. And I find when I take a nap, which I do often, I typically wake up a little bit more refreshed, and when I come back to the problem or the whatever it is I'm working through, an assignment or whatnot, I'm a little bit more efficient and I can see it more clearly. And all of a sudden I'm just not as blocked. And so, as silly as it may sound, I really do think naps help.
Yeah. And, you said it in the book, page 11, that actual researchers are backing this up. So Carrie's not just saying just nap for fun.
No.
Researchers at the University of California, Riverside have determined that a 90-minute nap can lead to similar learning benefits, a must for creativity, as those produced by a full night's sleep. So, maybe a nap is exactly what you need to kind of kick your creative side into gear. Also, I love rule number 7 of what about taking a shower? I have some of the very best ideas in the shower that I wish I had some sort of waterproof whiteboard that I could write them down, because again, I think it shifts you out of whatever negative mind space that you're in and, helps you focus in a different way, which turns kind of a different switch in your brain. And a lot of great ideas come from there as well.
A lot of times too, one, I want to say there is actually a whiteboard for the shower.
Oh my gosh.
It. And so I think if you just Amazon that, I'm pretty sure you could find it. But that aside, I think, the shower, I think a lot of people get ideas in the shower, right? Because you're finally just sort of focusing on something else. You're focusing on, just getting your day started, or maybe you take showers at night, whatever, but you're just sort of, rinsing off that day and just sort of, moving on to the next thing. And so it kind of creates space. And that's the biggest thing, is you want space in your brain to be welcoming for ideas. And when you're in work mode, which doesn't usually happen in the shower, you're usually not typing away at an email or, solving, an assignment problem or whatever. But when you're in work mode, you are so narrowly focused and dialed in on tasks that's really the opposite space of where you need to be to welcome in ideas. And so things like the shower, or even just taking a walk, driving in the car, whatever it may be, those are all opportunities for your brain to take a little break. Even though you're still doing something, you're just not focused on your work in a way that blocks out sort of new, bigger thinking.
Yeah. And you know what? I think it's also interesting that you mentioned in the book is page 19, kind of talking about is it better to be brainstorming at a very, very clean desk, or maybe is it opportunity to give yourself permission to make a mess? I think that's really interesting to me. And I think this is the trap. Anybody that's listening, just go ahead and raise your hand right now. No one's looking. Is that you think you need to have the absolute perfect setting. So then you go out to Target and you buy all the things and you're like, oh, well, this is what will help me be creative. If I buy all matching desk accessories and post-it notes and da-da-da-da-da-da, and you come to sit down after you've spent whatever, $100 at Target, because it always seems to pay $100, no matter if you're going in there for some toilet paper. And then you set all your stuff out and you're like, okay, here it is. Come on, big idea, go. And it's dry, like a dry well.
Yeah.
So, that's not necessarily the truth. It's not what you need to make the perfect space and to have the $1 billion idea.
And science says, actually, that's, we have another study mentioned in the book where really the clean desk, the very organized, pristine desk, is the opposite of where you want to be for having big ideas and for creativity, because it basically says when you are in that space, you are almost more of a conformist. And so it doesn't encourage out of the box thinking. Whereas a little bit of clutter around, I think too much clutter can be, overwhelming.
Yes.
And, we're not talking hoarder level here, but we're talking a little bit of clutter. Like right now I'm looking at my desk. I have, envelopes over here, and I have, papers I have to file over here. And I have some Post-it notes around that need to be dealt with. I don't need to clear all of those off, which I actually thought prior to writing the book and doing the research for this, I thought you had to have the pristine desk and clean everything away, because in the same way that I mentioned the shower or taking a walk or whatnot, clearing space in your brain, I thought of it the same way as my desk. I need to have that vacancy almost to welcome ideas in. But studies show that when you have a little bit of clutter around, it actually makes you a little bit more creative. So I'm going to go with the scientists on this one and say you don't have to clean off your desk, and that you're going to have some bigger ideas if you don't.
Yeah.
But if you want to spend the $100 at Target, I can't stop you there.
Right. I mean, by all means, go for it. But, and for me, I do like to have a little bit of supplies around, like Post-it notes and Sharpies are definitely a must-have for me when I'm brainstorming, because I like to mind map and throw it down on paper. But then, it's all in measured outcomes, right? So when you start to go overboard and you're like, oh my God, I have to clean my house first before I could possibly brainstorm, or I have to get all the perfect items before, that's where it starts to get dangerous.
Well, and that's called procrastination.
Yes.
I mean, let's just be honest, right? Like I always say, if you think that your toilet needs to be cleaned before you need to do something, then you probably are procrastinating, because nobody in the world wants to clean their toilet, right? Nobody wants to clean the bathroom. But if you're like, hey, that sounds like a good idea right now, it means that whatever else you're supposed to be doing is probably what you should be doing instead of actually cleaning that bathroom. The bathroom can wait. Dig in and just get through it, because the longer you put it off, it's still going to be there at the end of the day, and you still are going to have to tackle it, and it's going to stress you out. So just get in it and do it. And you're often going to find that when you just start, that's when you actually find that it's not as hard as you thought it would be.
And you know what I think another part that was really interesting to me when I was reading through the book is that you guys also recommend moving around the different parts of your house throughout the creative brainstorm process. So if I'm working from home, think about, doing a portion of that brainstorm in the kitchen, cooking up some foods for maybe menu prepping for the week ahead. And that the actual process of trying out new recipes or trying new flavors and, getting some scents and aromas in, starts to activate different parts of your brain that might spark your next big idea. I love that. I love thinking that it doesn't have to happen at a desk in my home office. This is where all the magic is happening.
Right. And the thing with brainstorming, when you're at your desk, that's where you get your work done. And so your brain and your body just become kind of in that, sort of treadmill mode. You're just kind of moving, you're kind of going nowhere, but you're getting stuff done, But when you move out and you go into different areas of your home and even outside of your home, there's so many, that's the thing is like when you're in traditional business, you're stuck in a conference room. You're stuck in, the co-working or the spaces that you have together. But there are so many places that are open. You have a whole world that's open to you as a solopreneur, really. I mean, you have your entire home, but you can go to the library, the coffee shop, you can get a co-working space. You can, you can do this when you're traveling. I mean, I just think that where you are can really influence your ideas, because one of the foundations I see of brainstorming is perspective. And if you can put yourself in someone else's shoes, you're going to go much further with seeing that idea in different ways. And that can only happen when you're around people that you might not know of, So if you're traveling for a conference or a wedding, or you're just on vacation, go into new places and new spaces and see what those people are about, see what's happening in that space. And you just might find that you're going to kind of see things from a slightly different perspective. You're going to look at that idea or that creative dilemma that you're having and say, oh, I didn't think about how this person might use it or how that person might use it. And so I really encourage not brainstorming at your desk unless you absolutely have to, because again, it's another perk. You can get out and go somewhere else. And I really think it just opens your mind to bigger and better things.
And that's a really good point. Back last spring, I was able to do some traveling to Marrakesh, of all places. I mean, talk about open markets and all five senses and spices and things like that. And, I am one to travel with a journal and some markers and pens in my purse and just be on the go. And so imagine in your local city, farmer's market or a museum or a cafe that you've always wanted to try, but you never seem to get around to time to do it. Girl, you are mobile. You can go to these places. You are not stuck in a cubicle farm. Get out, get inspired, and you never know what might come from that. But then, Carrie, how do we not get stuck in the rabbit hole of procrastinating again, though? How do we stay on target when we are wandering and going all the different places?
Yeah, so I think you just have to have like a process, right? I mean, I don't know about you when you're working, but I have a process for when I sit down at my desk. First thing in the morning, I'm usually putting down like sort of, just a brain dump, if you will, of everything that has kind of popped up since I've been sleeping, or, the night before, of like, I need to do this, or this, or maybe I'm breaking down a task into steps. And then I go through my email, and then I tackle the things that are on my to-do list. Like, that's sort of my process. And so when it comes to brainstorming, you have to have a process as well. And so sort of that process happens by if you found your space and you know where you want to brainstorm, you're at a coffee shop or you're out in the world, whatever it may be, the next step would be to do an icebreaker. So again, we're not doing those icebreakers, we're not figuring out, like, I'm not throwing a ball to you and you're making a sound, like, we're not doing that. Icebreakers for the solopreneur are really about creative tasks. And so, this could be if you like to craft or you like to, be creative in some way, great. You already have something that gets your brain to switch off that work mode and move into a more creative space.
Yeah.
But if you don't tend to be a more creative person, like, I don't want you to have to break out the popsicle sticks and the glue. Like, this is not what it's about. Instead, it's just, kind of releasing. I actually did one of the exercises from the book with a group of female entrepreneurs a couple of weeks ago, and it was so much fun. And it's as easy as opening your junk drawer and pulling out some twist ties. So we all have those twist ties that are lying around at the bottom of the junk drawer. Pull them out and create a little sculpture with them. Use them as just a medium. You're not sharing this with the world. I mean, you could take a picture and put it on Instagram, whatever. But, the idea is to, again, just make that switch over. And it was funny to watch these women. This is the first time I've done the activity with a group of people. And it was funny to watch them because they were all so quiet. They were all so determined. And it was a workshop that was in the evening. So they had all been working during the day. And now they're moving into, a 2-hour workshop with me, which I'm like, oh, that just sounds awful. I just want to be at home in my jammies watching Netflix, right? And so but it was great because they were all kind of like really involved. Some people, made their name out of them. Some people made little flowers. Some people got really intricate. And I only gave them about 3 to 5 minutes to do this exercise. And it was amazing to see kind of that switch. And I asked everybody who felt like they made a transition from letting go of the day and just feeling a little bit lighter, and everybody raised their hand. And it was just as simple as a twist tie. So it just goes to show you can do kind of any activity, doodling, writing your name backward, whatever it may be. And then once you're starting to feel like you're in that sort of relaxed space, then it's time to move into the brainstorming. And so you can pick any technique from the book to get started. And what I like about the way we have the technique set up is that you really can, do one. Sometimes you're going to need to do multiples, and that's okay. That's not saying that you're doing one wrong. In fact, I have 2 that I pair together, or I have one that I pair with others all the time, and it's called toddler technique. Mm-hmm. And the toddler time actually is what it's called. But what it is if you think about a toddler, they haven't been around for very, very long, right? Couple of years, and they just don't understand how the world works around them. And so they want to know, why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green, right? But if you've ever been party to a questioning toddler, you know that they are going to inevitably ask you, well, why? So when you're feeling stuck, that's like a great place to start. Tap into your inner toddler and start asking those questions. And it's actually a technique I like to add on to brainstorming techniques, because a lot of times the first brainstorming techniques will get your ideas going and kind of get them started. And then you bring in your toddler and you start asking, well, you ask more than why. You ask what I like to call I refer back to the journalism standards of the 5 W's and an H, right? The who, what, when, where, why, and how. Mm-hmm. So you start to apply those questions. Well, who could this work for? Why would they need this? Where would they use this? And you start to see those ideas start to develop a little bit further.
I love that. And I think that, again, what this is activating in you with the icebreakers first and then the brainstorm activities next is activating sort of that childlike sense and wonder inside you, because then that's where creativity comes from. And you mentioned very quickly, but I think it's also really fun. If you're listening to this right now, try it right now. Try writing your name in really fancy script backwards, and give it a go. And that's activating a different part of your brain. I also think that sometimes why we procrastinate from brainstorming or really tackling a big challenge is sometimes fear. It's just like,
Totally.
oh, I'm too afraid of what's going to come up from this, what I'm going to feel in this process, or the answers are going to be ones that I'm not ready to really face yet. And so, that's why we procrastinate and do other things, or even avoid, tackling the challenge at all.
Yeah.
Is sometimes it's just scary.
And we actually have an icebreaker for that, and it's called Dear Fear, and it's writing a letter to fear. And so you pick a fear that you have at that moment, or maybe you've always had it, and you write a letter and you say exactly why you're scared of it and what it does to you and how it makes you feel, and just talk to fear as if it were a person, essentially. And sometimes just the act of writing that out will help you to see maybe where it's stemming from. And we do look at this as a creative challenge because, again, this isn't work mode. This is you tackling you in a sense, right? And it's opening your mind in a different way to understand who you really are. And what I really like about the Dear Fear task or assignment, if you will, is we say to now write a letter back to yourself from fear. What would fear tell you? What would it say to you that, like, well, maybe you don't need to be afraid of this because this is what I'm after. So now, again, it's that switching of perspectives. And again, I go back to that all the time. That's one of the foundations of brainstorming, is switch your perspective and see it from a different angle. And so you're starting to do that. And at the same time, you're helping to kind of put those fears in a sort of in a different light, essentially, and see it for what it really is and kind of help yourself along.
Mm-hmm. And then that diffuses its power over whatever situation you're struggling with. And yes, I love that. It also makes me think of recently my daughter did a cooking class, and before she was like, oh my God, this is so scary. I don't know if I want to do it. And like, what if they're all better than me? Blah, 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 blah. And then she did it. And, immediately after she said, Mommy, I want to do it again. I can't wait to do it again. And I think that translates to even me at age 41. I think of many moments where I'm like, oh my God, this is so scary. I don't know if I could speak in front of an audience of 800 people or whatever it is.
Right.
And then I did it. And then I'm like, oh, I want to do that a lot more. Like, that was so much fun. Like we build things up in our brain to be this big, scary monster. But the reality is, it's not.
And it's really that confidence building, right?
Yeah.
The more you do something of anything, the better you're going to get at it, or the more you're going to realize this isn't for me. But if you do it enough, you're going to see that, like, either it's scary for a reason and it's not meant for me, or, hey, this is helping me grow and develop. And, I was the same way with, personal or with public speaking. I just was like, I kind of always knew I wanted to do it, but I didn't really know what I would talk about. And that was when it kind of more in my freelance writing life. Mm-hmm. And when I moved into Wonder, it was like all of a sudden I just had this platform of ideas and creativity and, innovation. And the more I talked to people, the more they wanted to know. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to just do this. And I remember thinking, like, I've never done this before. The first time I got up, it was like in front of like 150 people. Yeah. And I thought, like, I haven't done public speaking since maybe high school or college, and even that was pretty minor and nothing, as prepared as what I think it was an hour and a half talk that I had to do. And I wasn't nervous to the extent that I didn't want to do it, where I was like, what am I getting myself into? But, you definitely feel that shift of like, oh my God, mm-hmm. The fight or flight syndrome that happens. Yeah. And so, but, I got up there and I did it. And now it's like, that's all I want to do. And so sometimes you just have to throw yourself into those situations and see where they lead.
It's so true. And, I think what your book also does a really good job of is that you're building these skills, right? You're building this discipline, you're building this ability to brainstorm solo. But, really the truth is it's also helping you be better at developing ideas before you go off and present them towards your team, towards a client, like when you're pitching a new collaboration. So talk to us more about that. Like, how can solo brainstorming help us truly develop ideas before we present them to a greater group?
Yeah, so that's the biggest thing is, when you break down the being a solopreneur and needing ideas, they're not always for you. And that's because the simple equation is when you solve for X, X equals a paying client or customer. Those ideas eventually have to get in front of somebody who's going to pay you for them or going to lead you to them in some way. The problem is, or maybe not the problem, but what happens is that when you have that idea and you get in front of people, well, now there's more cooks in the kitchen, right? So they're now going to start to pick apart that idea. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, you try to hold on to it. No, this is my baby. But you really can't think of ideas that way, especially when they pertain to, a group collaboration session. It's about having a starting place. That's what you need to think of your idea as. And it goes back to what I talked about before. In the group setting, ideas start with one person. And so you're that one person now bringing the idea to the table. Now, in my opinion, I feel that group brainstorming as a whole would be a lot better if everybody came to the table with their own ideas. So even people who aren't solopreneurs, people who work in traditional businesses, if they do any type of brainstorming session, even if it's for, process improvement or, problem solving or anything, this book really comes in handy for those individuals as well because, managers should be wanting their team members to come to the table with ideas so that when they start the brainstorm, the ideas already exist. That doesn't mean new ideas aren't going to develop from there, but you're not starting from this complete blank slate because blank slates are overwhelming and oftentimes they lead us nowhere, right? Because another study shows that constraints actually increase creativity. So when you put some constraints on it, those constraints being people coming to the table with ideas, you're already starting to kind of shape and form what's going to happen going forward. So it really makes a big difference when everybody comes to the table with their idea and then all those ideas are heard, because that's the biggest problem I have with group brainstorming is people like me who are extroverted and talk a lot tend to overshadow the people who are more introverted and often probably have better ideas than the extroverts in the room. Studies show introverts have great ideas and probably better than extroverts. The problem is when they get into that group session, they just don't get heard. And so what happens is, most group brainstorms, somebody says an idea and somebody jumps onto it and then it just goes, right? You start to move in that direction. All the ideas weren't heard. And so most likely you've left behind something that could have even if it didn't take off on its own, could have added to maybe an idea that had already been said.
And so really what you're saying there is like, if you work for a big corporation or you're an employee, you don't own your own business. I mean, again, if you've got a big team retreat coming up or you've got to strategize through a challenge, if you can get your hands on the agenda before the meeting, so you at least know what are the major talking points that we're going to cover. So you can go through that process of doing a bit of this brainstorming solo, a bit of this pre-work so that you come to the table prepared. You come to the table with ideas rather than your boss going, okay, right, you guys solve this, go. And everybody's like looking at just whoever's the most talkative in the room to be the one to answer the question. Boy, howdy, think about your opportunities there to shine and to step up to the plate. Like that's the truth.
Yeah. And it was funny, you said in your introduction about having the next $1 million idea. And I kind of laughed internally because I've actually, at American Girl, was brought into a room and was told that was our objective, was to come up with the next $1 million idea. Go. And everybody just sort of is like, and we had really great brainstorms at American Girl. Like they were always very creative and, we would do a lot of fun exercises and activities. But that one was particularly stalling because everybody's like, that's overwhelming. That's a huge
ask.
It's a huge ask, especially when you put no parameters around it. Do you want it in the toy world? Do you want it in the book world? Do you want it in entertainment? Or can it be all of those? And they're like, yes, 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 and yes. Again, you've given me no parameters to work against. So you just keep, you need the constraints at play. And again, that's where people like me just start talking because they feel awkward that this, with the silence of other people. Yeah. Right. And so what happens is I'm going to throw an idea out there. It's probably not going to be very good, but it's going to be the direction people go in because, well, somebody said something. Let's do that, you know? So really, you just need to be able to come to the table all with your own ideas and have those ideas heard.
It's so good. And there are quite a few different kinds of assignments inside the book that are easy, quick ways to kind of get your brainstorm process rolling. So if you're tasked with this giant question like that from the hires up, or you even are trying to tackle it on your own, these will help you break it down and create a framework on how to get to the answer faster. One of the ones I want to shine a spotlight on really, really quick that I thought was brilliant is page 74 in your book. One of the brainstorm assignments is help your business bloom. And it really takes the simple framework of understanding how plants grow. So taking it from the roots and the soil, the stem, the leaves, like what helps your business grow? The sunlight, water, bloom, and when it blooms, what is it that your company needs or help to attract customers and clients? And then also the weeds, like what do you need to pull out or the environment itself in order for your business to thrive and grow. So again, just going through that very simple visualization of thinking of your own business as a plant and what does it need to grow in the best possible environment. Hopefully your brain is starting to churn in those ways of thinking, well what does help my roots thrive? What does my plant need in order to survive and to grow and multiply? So I highly encourage you guys to grab yourself a copy of this book. And again, the book is called Me, Myself, and Ideas, The Ultimate Guide to Brainstorming Solo. You can find that book online, Amazon, or wherever you buy books. And I highly recommend, if you are intrigued by this, to check out their website as well, wonderideastudio.com. And all the links will be in our show notes as well. Is there any last parting thoughts, common mistakes people make when brainstorming? Anything last you want to talk about there?
So common mistakes when brainstorming, I'll take that one because what people often tend to do is they get the aha moment or they think they have the aha moment.
Yes.
And they run with it. It's an immediate reaction, right? Like I'm the same way. My husband is the exact opposite in this way. Like he is a scientist. He questions everything to almost default sometimes, but he is the extreme devil's advocate, which is great. But it's not the person I need to go to when I have that aha moment because I haven't given that idea some time to what we call sit and simmer. And that's not my term, actually. That's just a brainstorming term. But to really just, you talked about the plant. So think of all ideas are kind of, often called seeds, right? The seed of the idea. And that's because seeds need time to germinate. You can plant the seed, you can give it good soil, you can give it water, you can give it sunlight. But after that, you're hands off. You have to let it sit. Time has to take its, due course. And ideas are the same way. So if you get an idea, don't immediately go out and buy the URL. Don't go out and share the idea on social media. Don't invest all this time and energy into it because as soon as you do that, now you feel invested and you feel like, well, I've paid money for it. I have to do something with it because what inevitably will happen is somebody's usually you will question it down the road, right? You're going to start to it's going to pick apart essentially, right? You're going to pick it apart and find, oh, well, wait, what about this? And but that already exists out there. Is that going to be a problem for this? Or you're just going to find those questions that naturally pop up, right? So I've joked before that it's comparable to when I got a bad haircut. I found a picture in a magazine I was flipping through one day and I was like, oh, I loved it. It was probably during the Friends stage, the Jennifer Aniston haircut.
We've had that look. We've all had that look.
We've all had it. But at the time I decided I wanted it right then and there. And I ran out and found I didn't go to my normal hairstylist. She didn't have an appointment. I just found somebody new and they cut my hair and they hacked it. It was terrible. And so had I just maybe slept on that, maybe waited for my stylist to be available and she could say how it works with my hair, my hair type and all of that, my face, I wouldn't have been in a baseball cap for, the few weeks or months after that. It's the same thing. If you just sit on the idea for a little bit, you're going to see it come to life in a way that you might not be able to do on your own. You can't push and force it. It just sort of has to naturally bloom and grow. And so I would say that's the biggest thing. If you have an idea, give it time, let it, it doesn't mean you can't tell anybody about it, but don't invest too much in it. Let it be its thing for a while.
I couldn't agree more on that. 100%. You got to let it sit, simmer, percolate a little bit, and come back to it with fresh eyes for sure. So again, you can check out her book online, Me, Myself, and Ideas, The Ultimate Guide to Brainstorming Solo. Also, you're still on tour with this book. So if you are wanting to meet Carrie in person, I know she's speaking at the NACE conference in Cincinnati, July 14th to the 17th, 2019. So make sure to check out her book for other locations that she will be at out in the world to meet you guys. WonderIdeaStudio.com is her website. Okay, so Carrie, I have a couple of questions to wrap up this interview. And again, thank you so much. I really think this is, it's a fun topic to talk about, but also your book is just so fun to read as well, which really and reinforces the idea of getting creative and getting outside your normal routine. So tell us, what's one book you're reading these days or a blog that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system right now?
Yeah, so one of the books that I'm actually rereading because I'm doing so much on the book tour of presenting and speaking in public is Talk Like TED. And it's the TED Talk book. Basically, it breaks down presentation styles that are used in the TED Talks that we all watch on YouTube and that kind of thing. And while my talks are a lot longer and some people have no interest in actually doing any sort of presentations live or public speaking, what I really love about the book is its focus on storytelling. And storytelling is important no matter what you do, because it's how you can resonate with your client or your customer. Even if you're just writing the about section for your website, storytelling is going to be so much better than, my name's Carrie and I like to knit and I have a bulldog. You know what I mean? Instead of making that laundry list, tell a story and help people to connect with you in a more, on a deeper level. And that's just going to have a bigger impact, and they're going to want to know more about you and more about how to, engage with you and move forward and work with you.
Yeah, it's a great book. We'll put a link in the show notes for this episode so you guys can check that one out. But again, it dovetails straight into all this great work that you do when you brainstorm solo. Then you now need to present this idea out to the world, either to your clients, your coworkers, your service providers, that you need to get them to buy in as well. So yes, one goes with the other. So Carrie, tell us, who's one person in your network that you just feel is up to brilliant things and we should shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe even have them on the podcast one day?
Yeah, so her name is Ann Adamitz, and she has been sort of my mentor. She offers kind of a lot of different holistic healing kind of services, such as acupuncture and yoga therapy, and but the mentoring sessions for me have been really powerful. I actually worked with Ann initially when I was at American Girl, and she was kind of like my therapist. And what I loved about her was I didn't have to talk about my mom or, my childhood and what I'm, repressing. But instead, I walked out with things that were all about today and all about moving forward. So I had, almost homework that I could do when I left. And I really see her as someone who was pivotal in helping me to kind of really embark on that solopreneur journey that I'd always wanted to do, but was so afraid of. And so I don't think I would be here today without her. And I still see her to this day to help me with Wonder and help me with, what I'm doing, in my own business now. And she's just, she's funny. She's just she's just a breath of fresh air. And so I really love working with her. And the great thing is, even though she's local to me, she does phone sessions and all of that. So I can always have her no matter where I am, if I'm on the road or whatnot. So
yeah, she sounds
she's
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a link in the show notes so you guys can check her out. I highly recommend. You always need to find a mentor or a business coach, somebody that's going to run alongside you in your journey as a business owner. Yes, she sounds amazing. So gratitude and simplicity in my mind go hand in hand. Tell us, what's one thing you're grateful for right now in your life?
I am grateful for, so many things. I'm blessed to be where I am today. I'm grateful really for my support circle that I have. In addition to my husband and my dog, who are awesome, I have what I call the inner circle. And it's a group of friends that I just know I can always go to no matter what. And they hold me up when I'm falling down. But, they're also there to, we're there to make each other laugh. And we were all American Girl employees. Now, of the 5 of us, only one is still an American Girl. We've all either moved on in some way. And there's nothing I can't turn to them for. And I just feel so grateful to have that in my life, because a strong support system will take you so much further than what you can do on your own.
100% agree with that. So where can we find you online? Where do you hang out the most?
Okay, so Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, and it's all at Wonder Idea Studio.
Okay, perfect. So we'll put those links in the show notes. So if people want to connect with you online, they can find you there. Okay, so my last question for you is this. And again, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I think that there's hopefully lots of people out there that are listening that have sparked a new idea and thought, oh, maybe this book is what I need to help me get to where I need to go. So someone somewhere is listening to this episode right now. Maybe she is tackling a huge change either in her personal life or in her business, and she knows she needs to sit down and start brainstorming it out and coming up with a solution for this change. What's one thing that you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
I would just say that all the power you have is within you. And I just heard something the other day where somebody said, where you are right now is exactly where you need to be, but I've heard that before, but more so it's that the skills and everything you have now, you didn't have before. And so that's why you are where you need to be right now, is because everything you've developed up to this point is going to help you be where you are. But that doesn't mean you can't grow and develop. And you're going to, at one day, in the future, look back and see how much further you've come from even where you are right now. And so look back from this moment and see that you've come pretty far already. And you couldn't have done that if you didn't have what kind of that strength and power you needed to do it. So just know that everything within you is helping you to get to where you need to be. So just sort of stay the course and, tap into that inner strength.
You got this, girl. You got this.
Totally.
You got this. Thank you, Carrie, so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.